Minister, Your Excellency, thank you very much for talking to Sky News. First of all, can I just get your sense of what you hope this G20 will achieve? It's taking place under difficult circumstances, different circumstances. What do you hope that it will achieve?
Presidency was based on themes that deal with empowering our populations, in particular youth and women, protecting our planet, and in all facets what that means, and also ensuring that we have better international cooperation, multilateralism, in order to deal with the challenges the world faces. And I believe that the pandemic has proven that unless we all work together, all of us will lose, and that the more we work together, the more effective we are in dealing with challenges such as this pandemic, and also in the future, other challenges that we may face.
I was going to pick up on precisely that, because I think coronavirus has proved, has it not, how the world has failed to work together. I mean, organisations like the G20, groupings like the G20, these are just the sorts of forums that should be coming together with a global crisis like this. Have we seen an extraordinary global failure in terms of dealing with coronavirus?
I don't believe so. I think the pandemic was unprecedented. What has the G20 done and the world done in this? They have spent almost $20 billion working on vaccines. They have spent $11 trillion to stabilize the global economy. They have spent $230 billion in order to restructure loans for poorer countries. So what we're seeing is an event that has brought the world closer together. And our hope is that when this pandemic is over, and it will be over, that the lessons learned from this pandemic is that by working together, we can achieve a lot more than by working against each other. I think with the vaccine, you're absolutely correct. We have to agree on whether it is safe, what the protocols for administering it is, and most importantly, where the priority goes, because you don't want the wealthy countries to be able to vaccinate their people and the poorer countries left in the dark.
When will you bring the war in Yemen to an end?
We wish that the war in Yemen never started. It was forced on us by the Houthis when they took over the legitimate government of Yemen and imprisoned its president and destroyed its emerging democracy. The Houthis are an organization that's allied with Iran and Hezbollah, and we were not going to allow Yemen to be taken over by such an organization. We intervened at the request of the legitimate government in accordance with UN Article 51 of the UN Charter. We said from day one that there is no military solution, it has to be a political solution. We have supported every political initiative by every UN special envoy. We have engaged in confidence-building measures. We have provided gestures. 6 months or so ago, we announced a ceasefire unilaterally. We provided exchange of prisoners. But every time there seems to be an agreement or an understanding, the Houthis renege on it. That's the challenge that we have in Yemen. And I think it's important that the international community put pressure on the Houthis in order to cause them to come to the negotiating table and reach a political settlement.
But the UN is now accusing you and the Houthis of war crimes, both sides. I mean, this has been going on for 6 years. It's for so long been talked about as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. It's horrific what's going on there. And all we hear from you, with respect, and those on the other side, is just words. When is the war going to be brought to an end? It is in your power to bring it to an end.
You can't stop a war unless you have a political settlement. We have reduced military operations substantially. We don't launch ballistic missiles at towns and villages against civilians. We don't employ child soldiers with boys who are 8, 9, 10 years old. That's what the Houthis do. The Houthis stop humanitarian assistance from reaching people. They stop the World Food Programme from distributing food. They stop the World Health Organization from distributing cholera vaccine. They rob the central bank. They rob the phone company. They rob the income from the port of Hodeidah. And yet nobody seems to be blaming them. It's tragic that this war has gone on for so long. Yemen is our neighbor. We want Yemen to prosper and to be stable. The war in Afghanistan took the United States and its coalition partners 19 years, and it's still not over. The war against Daesh in Syria and Iraq involves more than 70 of the world's greatest powers, and it's been going on now for 5 years or 6 years, and it hasn't ended yet. So I'm not saying that the war in Yemen,
Minister, are you saying that this war, I mean, you're equating it to Afghanistan, are you saying this one could go on for many, many more years?
I hope not, and we're trying our best to try to put it to an end very quickly.
Back to the G20, a very exciting moment for Saudi Arabia, and a moment of hope and looking forward to the future. But at the same time, it is clear from what we've heard over the past few days that human rights issues are still at the fore when it comes to Saudi Arabia. I want to talk briefly about Lujain Al Hathul. She is still in prison. When will she be released, and why is she in prison in the first place?
She will be released when the court, when the legal process plays out. Her case is being reviewed by the courts, and then once she's released, then she will either be punished or she'll be released. It's up to the courts. The decision to detain her had to do with national security issues and not with advocating the right of women to drive. If every woman in Saudi Arabia that advocated to drive would be put in jail, then half the ladies in Saudi Arabia would be detained by now.
Why is she a national security issue?
It has to do with national security. It has to do with taking funds from foreign powers and giving them to hostile powers. It has to do with trying to recruit people in sensitive position in order to obtain sensitive documents and give them to powers hostile to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This is what the public prosecutor said when the detention was made, and I believe that the rest of the evidence will be made public, I expect, by the court once the verdict is rendered. Because under our system, the courts generally provide the details of the charges after a verdict is rendered.
But she's not been given access to her family. She's not able to make phone calls. There are allegations of various forms of abuse of her in prison. She's currently, I believe, on hunger strike as a consequence of all this. I mean, just broadly, sir, as a minister, this doesn't look good for Saudi Arabia, does it? This is a woman's rights, a female rights activist.
On what basis do you say that she wasn't granted all these rights? Because I believe that our security officials dispute that in terms of no contact and in terms of hunger strike and in terms of abuse and in terms of this issue was taken very seriously by the leadership of my country, and His Majesty and the Crown Prince ordered an investigation into the issue, the allegations of abuse or torture. And so on what basis do people say this? As far as I know, this is not correct. She is detained like other detainees. She is facing trial, and when the trial is over, she will be found guilty or found innocent. It's up to the courts. And if she should be found guilty, I would expect, and generally this is what the courts do, is that the evidence will be made available.
Can I invite you to reflect a little on the Trump presidency? It is over, 4 years. How will Saudi Arabia remember 4 years of Donald Trump?
Well, technically it's not over, it's another 2 months. But the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has a bipartisan relationship with the United States. Our relationship was started between King Abdulaziz and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a Democrat. It continued through every Democratic and Republican administration, and it has grown stronger and stronger with each decade. I believe that the United States, I know the United States has interests around the globe. Saudi Arabia has interests around the globe. Our interests are aligned, and those interests are not going to change. And we look forward to working with any American administration to further those interests.
The interests might not change, but the strategy of a Biden administration might be somewhat different. I mean, he is going to have a different relationship with Saudi Arabia in the same way that he's going to have a different relationship, perhaps a less warm relationship, with Israel, for example. I mean, how do you expect the next 4 years to differ from the last, and are you worried about them?
I believe President-elect Biden was in the Senate for 35 years, and he was vice president for 8 years. He has tremendous experience. He knows the world. And everybody, I believe, that he's going to appoint in his administration are people that we are likely familiar with and have worked with extensively over the years. So I'm not concerned about the change in the American position or American policy. What happens is, from one administration to the other, the articulation might differ, but the implementation really doesn't.
I wonder what your view is on the fact that Donald Trump is insisting he actually won the election, and the idea of a President-elect Biden is not true. He is still and will remain the president.
As a foreign official, I don't believe it makes sense for me to comment on the internal deliberations of the United States, and especially when it comes to elections with constitutional matters. I will leave that to my friends in the United States to resolve.
So you're fully expecting a President Biden come January the 20th next year?
We will see. I can't, like I said, once the election is certified, we will know who the president is.